Okay, this is developing a resilient Colorado curation model, the innovative solution to addressing the state's collections care needs. I'm Todd McMahon. I'm with the Office of the State Archaeologist at History Colorado. I hope that you'll find through my presentation that Colorado's state-approved museums and repositories are heavily interwoven by many partnerships and policies. It all started in 1973 when the Colorado legislatures decided that all artifacts and fossils found on state of Colorado lands proper, as well as any subdivision of state land, city, county, etc., belong to the state of Colorado, as well as any of the deposits. As such, all of these types of artifacts need to be housed in a museum or repository. All of our program guidance is found in our rules and procedures, which is 8 CCR 1504-7, section 9, which was recently updated in 2017. Colorado is a bit unique in the fact that we don't really have a completely functioning centralized repository. Instead, we in fact fall within that lower 30% of states that have a more dispersed network. What started out with the Office of the State Archaeologist having an informal agreement with the University of Colorado at Boulder soon came to an abrupt end around the year 2000 when the University of Colorado at Boulder stopped accepting a lot of the CRM or cultural resource management projects that are found from state lands. This caused a curation crisis within Colorado. It soon made front page news through the local media and caused the Colorado Council of Professional Archaeologists to enact a special committee to look at and address this issue, which was a publication, a white paper on this issue as well. However, this particular problem was not unique to Colorado. Other states had also found that their curation situation was in dire need, and it was specifically addressed by the Society for American Archaeology and their curation committee. History Colorado, or then known as Colorado Historical Society in 2003, decided to try to partner to look at the feasibility of creating a centralized repository that would be both for federal and state collections. However, the initial startup costs and the funding for this, as well as the political will, simply did not materialize. As a result, we currently have a very dispersed network of over 39 currently accepting state-approved repositories throughout Colorado. In 2017, we revised our rules and procedures to give greater clarity to all of our partners on how they could care for their collections, drawing upon mostly 36 CFR 79 standards as our guide. One of the unique aspects of our approved museums, which ranges all the way from small county and city museums, as well as small institutions that have small collections, such as this state park, Roxborough State Park, as this example shows, can hold state collections as long as they also maintain the same standards as our repositories and museums. Similarly, in the state of Texas, around the year 2000 to 2003, the Council of Texas Archaeology proposed that they created their own certification program for their collections. That was quickly supplanted by the state of Texas creating their own certification program for these types of collections, which currently exists to this day. However, the legal frameworks which created this and their rules and procedures were borrowed for Colorado. All of the collections in Colorado are held in trust in an express trust terms. Essentially, all of our partner repositories are trustees for the state. And as such, they hold these collections to the best of their ability, and we encourage their enhancement. So we encourage all of our repository partners to look to State Historical Fund grants that's administered through our program, as well as other national preservation, collections care, as well as educational grants to help facilitate and enhance their collection care. Some of the approved uses for our state approved repositories are that Repositories may fully exhibit and charge reasonable fees for exhibition purposes. The collections may be studied and photographed. Paleontological resources may be cleaned and prepared according to best standards. The collections may be loaned to other institutions. They just have to send notice to our office. Approved repositories may charge competitive deposit fees for those collections. And approved repositories may charge administrative processing fees for issuing curation agreements for our permittees. Some of the requirements and responsibilities are that they must be open to the public, free for study for students and researchers. They must carry a fine art insurance policy or be self-insured. The curation agreement templates must be approved by our office to avoid any title confusions. They must notify the state archaeologist about any transfer or repatriation needs, as well as any damage or major damage issues. They must maintain all associated field notes, reports, etc. They are not allowed to release any locational information about prehistoric sites. They must be open for inspection. They must be able to sign an official receipt for deposit form, which the permittee sends back to our office. They must be able to accept collections within their region or their scope. They must report back annually on any changes to policy, damage, or tracking requirements, and they must maintain storage if that's given to them through a grant. And they must maintain a collections management policy and emergency management plan. Unlike the state of Texas, which has its own certification program, we rely heavily on museum best practices that's been developed and called the Continuum of Excellence program, which was created by the American Alliance of Museums and the American Association of State and Local History. So essentially, any of our state approved repositories must prove their reputableness by going through an assessment of their own. This could be a STEPS program assessment, or a MAP museum assessment program, or a conservation assessment, core documents review, or also have other federal collections, so following 36 FR 79 standards, or be assessed by a local museum organization such as the Colorado-Wyoming Association of Museums and their peer assessment program. And we have a lot of state collections that do need a lot of rehousing and recare and reanalysis. Here's a great example of some collections that have perishable materials associated with them that we're hoping that new students and researchers will have an interest in both restudying, and in this case, studying maybe for the first time, as well as rehousing and maybe trying to schedule some conservation work that's needed. Our program also offers a lot of support for our repositories in the form of having an internship program where we train our interns on our practices, as well as have them available for all of our state approved repositories for any kind of collections needs, such as inventorying, rehousing, and such. We also have partnered with our local avocational groups, such as the Colorado Archaeological Society and the Western Interior Paleontological Society on collections care needs. We have our own laboratory, so we can do some training there, as well as looking at artifact analysis and rehousing. We also offer some repository training in the form of some in-person training, although that hasn't happened this past year. We have had curation forums where we had a half-day session of training, as well as followed by a half-day of behind-the-scenes tours. That's all really gone to a virtual background now. And we also encourage local governments, particularly those that have historic preservation boards, to remember to incorporate their local state-approved repositories and museums for both planning, grants, exhibits, and emergency coordination. A good example of this happens to be the city of Colorado Springs and their Camp Creek Drainage Project, which was a FEMA project, Section 106, that happened on city of Colorado Springs lands near Garden of the Gods. The city archaeologist, Anna Cordova, found the remains of a 19th century trash dump that happened to relate to a very important individual, General William Palmer, the actual founder of Colorado Springs. Through the mitigative efforts of this particular project, we uncovered an amazing assortment of state-associated artifacts that give us great insight onto the behavior of this very important and influential family. Almost immediately, those artifacts were put on display at the state-approved Colorado Springs Pioneer Museum as part of their sesquicentennial celebration, which still continues to this day. This particular project was the subject of a number of TV documentaries, as well as the recipient of this year's State Archaeologist Award. Our program, therefore, encourages a lot of reanalysis by students and researchers, as well as educational endeavors associated with those, such as temporary exhibits, for instance. We really do need to kind of educate our citizens more about why these collections are so important. I think if we don't, then these collections are going to be lost and forgotten. So there are a lot of benefits. We need to, first of all, reach out to all of our researchers and students who are interested, and also have our local communities have a better understanding of the broad scope of their own history. I think it can be a real win-win for everybody. Since this office is the one who actually oversees the program, we're housed within the State Historic Preservation Office, or the SHPO office. And as such, we, unlike some other states, don't have an artifact inventory of all the artifacts housed at all of our partners. Instead, what we do have is inventories that are provided to us by our permittees, and then we are tying that information into our SHPO database so that there is tie-in to our site records, as well as our reports, and knowing where the repository information is located. Our program also offers a whole suite of documents and guidance materials on our website, all for our repository partners. And we also publish an electronic newsletter monthly, which any of you that may be interested in can certainly just contact me, provide your email, and I'd be happy to include you on that distribution list. I also encourage you to come and visit our website. That's historycolorado.org, state-approved museums and curatorial repositories. Don't forget all the hyphens between all of those words. And you'll find more information about our program there. So with that, I hope that you have found that Colorado state-approved museums and repositories are really heavily interwoven by many partnerships and policies. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if your state, region, or organization has any interest in this program. I'd be happy to hear from you, and I look forward to talking with you further. Thank you so much.